Welcome to the Tara Palmeri Show. It feels like every day there is another disturbing update on this case. I have been appearing on a lot of shows, CNN, MSNBC, to offer my analysis, always trying to remember the humans that are involved, the victims who have long been dehumanized throughout this entire story. But to hear that the second most powerful person in the Justice Department, the Deputy Attorney General, the number 2 law enforcement official in this country, met for a second time with Ghislaine Maxwell, convicted of sex trafficking, a pedophile, who multiple victims say she personally not only groomed them, but touched them. To hear that she has had a second private meeting, that means we don't have the transcripts, we'll never know what happened, with top law enforcement officials is incredibly disturbing. Okay, she's already been charged with perjury. Prosecutors didn't want to talk to her the first time because of it. She had a chance to state her case, to tell her side of the story, but she chose not to during her trial. I just want everyone to remember that. When I heard President Trump say this morning that she had a good heart, I felt violently ill. And I can only imagine how the survivors of Jeffrey Epstein feel right now. It took a lot of courage for them to come forward. As you'll hear in my interview with with Annie Farmer and Maria Farmer, the 2 sisters who were assaulted and groomed by Ghislaine Maxwell. I mean, they trusted her, and it was a bait and switch. And Annie testified in the case against Ghislaine Maxwell. She tells me it took years and years and years. I mean, they first reported this in 1996 and were ignored over and over and over again until 2021. Annie spent years waiting for that trial to happen, testifying, telling her story over and over and over again. She had this little shred of justice, and the most powerful people in the world are threatening to take it away from her again. This is a huge power imbalance story. It is disgusting. And, President Trump was asked, would you consider pardoning Ghislaine Maxwell? And he was like, basically wouldn't rule it out. He said he hasn't thought about it. He's leaving the door open. And then his Boy Scouts, like Charlie Kirk, said it was worthy of praise, that it showed courage that Ghislaine Maxwell would speak. Greg Kelly of Newsmax suggested that she might be a victim herself or innocent. It's just like, what is going on in the collective consciousness? Will this work? Will people just decide that the words of a 1,000 women don't mean anything? I mean, if you really want to advance this case and actually prosecute third parties, Johns, other people who abused young girls and trafficked young girls, all you have to do is look at the victims' files. All you have to do is talk to them. All you have to do is take their word. So it's just been another really disheartening day. I will, have another show for you out on Sunday. It's a really deep dive and emotional story after talking to Maria and Annie, who have been in touch with me this entire time, and it's been sickening for them. I'm merely the messenger, but I've been covering this story for so many years. And first with the podcast Broken, Jeffrey Epstein, where I traveled around the country with Virginia Roberts Dufresne, and then Ghislaine the Maxwells. I also did a magazine piece for Politico magazine called The Women Who Enabled Jeffrey Epstein. I would definitely check it out. I'm in the Netflix docu-series on Ghislaine Maxwell as well. I know a lot about this case. I know it inside and out. And I think for anyone who actually really knows the details, you don't forget how integral Ghislaine Maxwell was to the sex trafficking operation, which was a sprawling sex trafficking operation across many states in which victims waited for decades for some sort of justice. All they got was Ghislaine Maxwell, and the government it looks like they're ready to take it from them again. And the worst part about it is it's happening behind closed doors. Why not have those conversations in broad daylight? Why not bring a camera crew? Why not let us all hear what Ghislaine Maxwell is sharing with Todd Blanche? After all, why would she talk if she wasn't going to get something out of it, right? What's in her interest? I mean, that's why she's been holding on to these secrets all along. She probably saw this coming. She's always known the most powerful people in the world. She probably knew at some point someone in power would get her out of prison. And that's terrifying. I want to thank everyone who's joined the channel in the past few weeks. I never thought, as someone who's covered power and politics for so many years, almost 2 decades, that this story would come back to life. I've been beating the drum for a while for the survivors, and I became close with Virginia Roberts Giuffre. I spoke to her before she took her life, and I continue to care about this story for them, more for them than for me. But so many of them are my age. We know the same songs from the same time, and we connect on a level because of that. And I understand the mentality that they go with, what they've gone through, and a survivor's mentality, and how it really degrades your humanity, your self-worth, and why you don't think you're worthy of much more, that you don't think you're worthy of justice or protection. And I do think that as journalists, as reporters, we are in service to the vulnerable, to the least powerful. That's why I've always covered power and politics, because it's about making sure that people without power have a say, that they're heard, that their voices are listened to. And that's why the Epstein story really cuts to the heart of it all. It's the global elites, and it's the most powerless people preyed on by people like Ghislaine Maxwell, who was a global elite, who went to Oxford, whose father owned the New York Daily News and the Daily Mirror and MTV Europe, and who hung out with princes and presidents. This is the story of our time, and anyone who wants it to go away, like our president, they don't understand. So take a listen here to this conversation I had on CNN. I've been on a lot of shows. I'm actually going to start saying no, because I want to do some more reporting. I have a lot of investigative reporting, like just kind of old leads that I feel like this is the time to pick it back up again. And I've been calling people, trying to find out who would support me in this reporting. Because the other thing is, as a woman, as an independent journalist, there really is, you become a target, especially when you're not associated with the news organization. So I just want to make sure people have my back when I go out there and try to do some real accountability journalism. And I want to thank all of the people on the channel who have my back and who keep coming back and supporting me and my work. And I do it for you, and I do it for the survivors and the people who have been through very similar situations. Preying on young and vulnerable people is a tale as old as time. Catholic Church, you saw it through the Spotlight series. You saw it with the Joe Paterno story. It's a story. It's a sad story of our culture, and we got to make it stop. So thank you to everyone. Take a listen here.
We're joined now by journalist and author of The Red Letter on Substack, Tara Palmeri. She's also the host of the Tara Palmeri Show podcast and has reported extensively on the Epstein case. Tara, good to see you. Thanks for being here. I know you posted, MAGA is trying to float the Ghislaine Maxwell is a victim. She's a predator, and everyone knows it. What are you seeing? What are you hearing as someone who has reported so extensively on this case?
They're trying to suggest that she deserves some sort of clemency, that she has bravery and courage, was what Charlie Kirk said on his show. You had a Newsmax host, Greg Kelly, suggest that she might not be a predator, that she might be a victim herself. President Trump said she has a good heart. It seems like they're laying the groundwork to suggest that this person does not deserve 20 years in prison. But, every single story is consistent when it comes to Ghislaine Maxwell and the way that she groomed these young girls, the way that she brought them to Jeffrey Epstein's home. I mean, she was a posh, sophisticated woman. Her father owned the New York Daily News, the Daily Mirror. She went to, Oxford. She was friends with a prince and a president. And she would find these young girls and she would say, you're beautiful, you're special. You want to be a model, you want to go to college, we're a couple, we can't have children, we can make your dreams come true. And the only way that they would be lured to a 50-year-old man's house was through the safety of a woman. And so she used that. And in the case of Annie Farmer and others like Virginia Giuffre, they said that on the first time that they were molested by Jeffrey Epstein, that Ghislaine Maxwell was molesting them as well, touching their bodies. So it's incredible to suggest that this woman has a good heart or that she might be a victim herself. These girls would have never ended up in Jeffrey Epstein's house if they didn't feel the security of a woman bringing them there. A posh, sophisticated woman that did not seem in any way to be a madam or a groomer. She traded on her connections to do that. And And I think people are they're losing the plot and how this happened. She was the top of a pyramid scheme and a very sophisticated criminal operation. And she said it to many of her friends that Jeffrey Epstein needed 3 orgasms per day, and that's what she would do. And she tried to make sure that happened for him.
Mm-hmm. And look, we heard President Trump today say he hasn't thought about a pardon for Maxwell. That's what he's saying publicly. What is your sense about what's going on behind the scenes? Is this something that's even seriously been considered or thought about?
Well, why entertain this meeting between the number 2, law enforcement official in the United States and this woman who is a pedophile and criminal in jail if there is not some sort of motive to it? I mean, what's the point? She's not going to speak unless she gets something out of it. Why do you think? You can go to the victims. They'll give you information they have over years. They've had to testify and relive their trauma over years. There's tons of testimony. There are tons of, third-party conspirators in their documents that have been redacted in the FBI vaults and files. If you wanted to actually follow up on these cases, you can. So what is the point of going to Ghislaine Maxwell when you have nearly 1,000 victims who could help you put together a case? She's only going to give you testimony that is going to say that she was a victim, that she did nothing wrong, or she could possibly exonerate the president. And not to say that he did anything wrong, but if her testimony helps him, it could, be a wink, wink, nod, nod, and she gets some sort of pardon. I mean, he's already not ruled it out. It makes a lot of the victims who have already been through this feeling like they're being shut out of the justice system and out of the process, feel like they're being re-victimized because, back in 2008, when Epstein was first tried, they kept them completely out of in the dark of the process. They never told them about the non-prosecution agreement, which, by the way, included Ghislaine Maxwell, that she would not be prosecuted in this. And it's long been a 2-tier justice process. So they're terrified that, again, the government will side with the powerful and they'll lose the tiniest shred of justice that they've actually had, and that's seeing Ghislaine Maxwell in prison.
Yeah, and just letting everyone know, you did publish a piece earlier this week called How the DOJ is Re-Traumatizing Epstein Survivors. It's worth remembering their role in all of this and what they've had to go through. Those survivors have had to go through this again and again and again. All right, Tara Palmeri, thank you so much. Really appreciate it.
Thanks for listening to the Tara Palmeri Show. I want to thank my producer, Eric Abinate, my booker, Jane Fusco, and my team of researchers, Abby Baker and Luke Radel, and my social media manager, Sarah Carney. If you like this show, please follow it, subscribe, leave a written review. I'd really appreciate that, and share it with your friends. You can get more of my independent reporting by going to tarapalmeri.com and signing up for my newsletter, The Red Letter. It'll come straight to your inbox, and if you become a paid subscriber, it's a way to support my independent journalism. I'll be back again soon.